What's up, HCWA fans? Welcome back to another edition of Shootin' with the Lawdog for HCWA Wrestling. And this time, I'm here with the one and only problem child, Robert Stanley. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
How you doing today?
I like to kid everybody. Anytime anybody asks me that, I always tell them I was doing great, but I got over it. So, yeah. But yeah, it's cool being here with you, being here with Devin. It's pretty sweet.
How old were you when you decided you wanted to be a professional wrestler?
About 4.5.
4.5, early.
Yeah. My grandfather, God rest his soul, him and my dad are the ones that got me into wrestling, got me to start watching it. And my grandfather died when I was 7, and right before he died, probably about, I don't know, maybe about 9 months or so before he passed away, I told him that when I grew up, that's what I wanted to do with my life. And he gave me the best advice anybody's ever given me. He said, son, if you want it, you got to work for it. You got to go get it. Ain't nobody going to hand it to you. Nobody's going to give you anything. You got to put in the work and you got to earn it.
Right. Who were your favorite wrestlers growing up?
Well, that's kind of a tough one. You know, everybody, the lines are a lot more blurred nowadays between heels and baby faces.
The gray area.
Yeah, the gray area, if you want to call it that. I've heard that term before. You know, the business right now, the way it is nothing like it was in the 70s and 80s. You know, I grew up watching Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood against the Briscoes. Not Mark and Jay, the original Briscoes.
They're good though.
Yeah.
And I respect the fact that they're staying true to Ring of Honor.
Yeah.
They've had the contracts offered from WWE and decided not to go. You got to respect the hell out of that.
Well, they just knew that WWE was going to water them down.
Yeah.
But you know, like I was saying, I've seen guys like Jeff Jarrett. I was just talking about, you know, come up through the ranks, you know, from a young kid and everything else. But if I had to pick favorites, as crazy as it's going to sound, actually one of my biggest influences was Jimmy Valiant.
Wow.
The Boogie Woogie Man, you know, he was always so electric. He was always just so, you know, I was speaking to Jeff Jarrett a minute ago. I've talked with you about this in private. You know, the documentary that TNA did, Jeff Jarrett, King of the Mountain. Jarrett just put Boogie over like gangbusters. He just talked about how, you know, Boogie was such a important figure, and said he actually learned more from watching Jimmy Valiant than being trained and listening to his dad on how to do stuff. He learned more about the business and how it works. And then, of course, the obvious, Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes.
American Dream, if you will.
You know, they were so iconic, you know, and to this day, it's like, you know, when people talk about wrestling, they don't always think about AJ Styles or Randy Orton or, you know, these guys. A lot of times when you mention something about wrestling, they either think Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, Ric Flair, or Dusty Rhodes.
And Sting is up there too.
And Sting's up there too. You know, being able, I was so blessed to grow up in the time that I grew up, because it was like, you know, I learned so much by watching. And then once I got on the inside, I got to meet a lot of my heroes. I've met Ric Flair. I never got to meet Dusty. I wished I had him. Somebody who I absolutely love and adore, and I actually teamed with one time, Ricky Morton.
Wow.
Rock and Roll Express. Yeah, dude, to see their resurgence right now, you know, dude, AEW Full Gear. Ricky Morton's 63 years old doing a Canadian Destroyer and a Tope Suicida.
Oh, wow.
63 years old.
Wow.
You know, and you know, they're the current NWA Tag Team Champions, him and Hoot. You know, I can't tell you how many shows I've worked on with those guys. And then, like I said, back in 2010, actually had a tag match. It was me and Ricky against, ironically enough, the Extreme Southern Outlaws. And they announced us as the Rock and Rebel Express. Getting to come out to the old ELO Rock and Roll as King, man, that was just, I was 14 years old all over again, you know. Man. And then, you know, Ricky gets in the ring and the Outlaws get a couple shots in on him, and the crowd's chanting rock and roll, and I'm getting to live that standing on the apron was just an amazing feeling.
And getting the hot tag.
Amazing feeling. Yeah, I got the hoot hot tag, baby. Yeah, that was good stuff. You know, and Jimmy Valiant. You know, I was talking about Boogie. You know, June of 2000, I had a hair versus hair match against Boogie over here at the Wentworth Recreation Center. You know, I wrestled against Boogie. Actually, we did a 6-man tag the night before. That was the night I turned heel to set up for the whole deal. And it was me, Matrix, and Enigma against Sweet Daddy, Boogie, and Chris Nelson, who, Preppy Pirate, shout out, used to wrestle in named Slim Jim Bowen. And man, that we had that crowd just going crazy. Match was over. Match gets thrown out. I'm sitting there. They got Boogie stretched out in front of me. I got his beard in one hand, a pair of scissors in the other, like I'm fixing to go to cutting on his beard. Here comes Butch Steel and Beef out of the back. We scatter. Man, the crowd, boy, we had them. We had them psyched and ready. And the next night when Boogie wrapped that chain, I had a chain. Vern was down. I go to hit Boogie. He blocks. Boogie hits me. I drop like a tree. 1, 2, 3. Crowd's going insane. He's cutting my hair off, slinging it out to the crowd. Man, it's just you can't buy memories like that, you know. But to be in there with your heroes like that, because Boogie, you know, Jimmy Valiant doesn't get enough credit for what he brought to our business and what it, you know, the influence he still has with his school up there in Shawsville, been going since '92. He's coming up on his farewell tour. You know, his first match, Brent, was May the 1st of 1964.
Damn, I hadn't even been born yet.
I wasn't born yet.
Whew.
Him and his brother Johnny was main eventing Madison Square Garden the month before I was born. Think about that. Main event, a tag team, main event in Madison Square Garden in 1973.
Right.
That's why Boogie's a WWE Hall of Famer.
It's kind of unheard of.
People, for that time, a tag team main eventing, yeah. And so it's like, you know, these guys, they bring so much, and they've given so much of their lives to this business, and guys like Boogie, and guys like Punky, Ricky Morton, you know, George South's another one. You know, George South don't get enough credit. You know, people call them jobbers, people call them enhancement talent, people call them whatever they want to call them. Those guys went in there, got their tails kicked to make superstars out of guys like Flair, guys like Magnum, guys like Nikita, and everybody else. They don't get enough credit for what they've done. And you know, George does a lot of work with another local promotion, the AML Wrestling out of Winston, that's tied in with Tracy Myers, Brian Hawks, and the WrestleCade crew. And you know, he does a lot of work with those guys, and it's like George is just a plethora of knowledge. You know, I mean, because like I said, people talk about the Flairs and the Dusties and the Nikitas and the Boogies and everybody else. They forget about George South and Rocky King and the Mulkeys and
Randy and
you
Bill.
know, yeah, you know, they all of these guys. You know, they forget about them. You know, and they shouldn't, because if it wasn't for them helping to build those stars up to go into their big feuds, you know, you'd see Flair wrestle. You know, you'd see Flair wrestle Rocky King on Saturday morning, and then he'd go out and he'd talk about the big match he was going to have later that night with Dusty. Or, you know, you'd have the Rock and Roll Express wrestling George South and Gene Ligon, and then they talk about, after the match was over, they talk about the big match they're coming up in 2 days against the Midnight Express somewhere for the tag team title.
The scaffold match.
People, they forget where it came from. They forget the roots of it, and, you know, George is helping a lot of people. A lot of people don't realize this, but when Cedric Alexander was working his tail off trying to get called up and get into the WWE, get into the 205 Live roster and everything, George South was helping to train him. George South was helping to prep him for that. Tessa Blanchard, Tully's daughter, doing an amazing job.
She's phenomenal.
Everywhere she goes, I'm glad she hasn't signed with WWE yet. Because
I
getting the work in,
honestly.
I hope she does eventually. If not, she needs to go to AEW. She needs to go to one of the two.
AEW.
Because she's a star.
Yeah.
She's a star, and she deserves to be up there where she's being seen on that level. But again, George South training. You know what I mean? And it's like, people don't, they like I said, they lose sight of what the business is, how it's constructed, and where it goes. And it's like, I learned so much from those guys. It's like, you know, I put a post on Facebook the other day. It was like, I saw one that my buddy Rob McBride had put up, talking about what 3 people helped you along the way and didn't really have to. And it was Boogie, it was Punky, and it was George. And I learned so much from all 3 of them because, you know, with Boogie, I learned how to electrify that crowd. I learned how to go out and be a larger than life persona in front of that curtain, you know, outside of that curtain when that camera's on. I learned a lot of being that larger than life person from watching Boogie. I learned, you know, I don't necessarily want to say the humility, staying humble or anything else. I don't know if that's really the right terminology to use, but I learned a lot of how to actually work a crowd. A lot of that I learned watching George, because George will go out there, and anybody that's seen a George South match knows he'll go out there and he'll ramble for 7-8 minutes before the first lockup. He ain't even took his ring jacket off yet, because he's got that crowd worked into so much of a frenzy. They don't know what's next. And then Ricky, you know, to me, and this is nothing against Hoot, this is nothing against anybody else. I admire Ricky Morton for not taking the spot, not taking the opportunity, because he didn't want to do anything that was going to damage what him and Robert had already built. But Ricky Morton should have been a world champion. Just point blank. Ricky had it. You know,
the solo matches he had against Flair was phenomenal.
Amazing. And it's like, you know, the thing with Ricky is, Ricky kind of crossed a lot of boundaries, because, you know, you think, oh, the big macho guys, you know, the guys are fans of the Magnum TAs and the Dusty Rhodeses and the Road Warriors, because they're these big badasses, you know. And the girls, they liked the Rock and Roll Express. They liked, you know, Barry Windham. They liked all the pretty boys and everything. But Ricky and Robert were more of a crossover, because the guys liked the Rock and Roll Express too, because they would go in there and just literally get the shit kicked out of them. And they came back every time. They would not give up. They had that Rocky Balboa fighting spirit. They would not give up, and it earned a lot of respect from a lot of people.
That beautiful double drop kick they had as a finisher.
Yes. I begged Johnny Roxville before he retired. I was like, dude, we got to throw at least one double drop kick. We got to pay homage to Ricky and Robert. We got to throw at least one. You know, it's just like, those guys are so influential. And like I said earlier, you know, I can't say enough how excited I am for Ricky and Robert, that they're getting the exposure that they're getting now to a whole new audience, a whole new generation. People are seeing Punky and Hoot on AEW. They're seeing them on NWA Power, which I love. I don't even get me started on NWA Power. That's a whole nother conversation for another time. I love what Billy Corgan's doing with that. I love the fact he's influxing indie talent like the Dawsons, who Zane Dawson is cooler than the flip side of the pillow. I love that guy. You know, Caleb Connolly's on there all the time. Caleb's an amazing talent. They're doing a lot with the indie guys, but getting off on a little bit of a tangent. But to see Punky and Hoot in the limelight again, it opens up generations, the generational gap, to now these kids are going to go back. They're going to be searching YouTube. They're going to be going through the vault of the network, the WWE network. They're going to be going through the vault to see these old matches.
Discovering something new for the first time.
Yes. It's like, you know, I'm doing a little bit of training for some guys right now, and part of their training is I set them down on my couch and they watched Ricky and Robert against Ole and Arn Anderson inside the cage, Starrcade '86.
Wow.
An amazing match.
What a beautiful match.
That's part of
psychology
the training.
match.
Oh, it was great. It was great. And it was just the story that was told, and it was like, you know, what I'm trying to teach these guys, it's like everything wrapped into a beautiful little package. And it was an amazing match. It was an amazing time. And again, I was lucky enough to grow up watching it. So, you know, my favorites, like I said, obvious Flair and Dusty. You know, Michael Hayes was a huge influence. I'm big on the Freebirds, and that's where a lot of the Raging Rebel character came from.
Best Street USA.
The Raging Rebel character, in theory, a lot of people compared the Raging Rebel character to Dusty because I do the flip flop and fly elbow and all that stuff, you know, and was this big, you know, most of the time solo babyface. I do some tag team stuff here and there, but most of the time I flew solo. But in theory, realistically, when I sat down and I put the Raging Rebel character together, the Raging Rebel character together, in my mind, was a little piece of all three of the original Freebirds.
Buddy
And
Jack
I say
Roberts.
original because people can argue all they want to. Jimmy Garvin was a Freebird. Period. Jimmy Garvin belonged in the Freebirds. Jimmy Garvin was a Freebird.
But you're talking about Michael
The original.
Hayes, Terry Bam Bam Gordy, and Buddy Roberts.
And Buddy Jack Roberts, yes. In my head, when I put the Raging Rebel character together, I took a little bit of each one of them and mixed it into how I would do it, how I would portray it, how I would put it out there. I used to do matches in Tennessee. You know, I didn't have the money for the big elaborate bedazzled Rebel flag cape that Michael Hayes wore to the ring. I just put the Rebel flag around my neck and go. Mm-hmm. And the people in the mountains of East Tennessee would go insane when I was going out there to Johnson City. I'd come out like that, and them people would just go absolutely nuts. But you know, that to me was a big thing because the Freebirds were a big influence for me as well. So,
how'd you get into the business?
Well, it's kind of strange how it all worked out. Chris Nelson, who I spoke of earlier, Slim Jim Bolin, he had a wrestling merchandise store down here in Eden, Backyard Sports. And I used to frequent that place quite a bit, as you know, being a wrestling fan. You know, he'd bring big name stars in. I got to meet Rob Van Dam down there. I got to meet Kane down there. Met Arn Anderson, Matt and Jeff, and Michael Hayes when Michael Hayes was managing Matt and Jeff. When they were actually down here at Chris's store the weekend before they won their first tag team title.
Was he Doc Hendricks then?
No, he was Michael Hayes.
Okay.
No, he was Michael Hayes. He was managing Matt and Jeff Hardy, and they were setting up for their big match against the Acolytes. Bradshaw and Farouk was on an episode of SmackDown that emanated from Fayetteville, and the weekend before that show, they were at Chris's store. And one of the coolest things to happen to me, other than the times I've been in the ring with Boogie and being able to work with Punky, was that afternoon, because when the meet and greet was over, Matt and Jeff were in their cars going back to Cameron. Me, Chris Nelson, another mutual buddy of ours, and Michael Hayes went to Pizza Hut in Eden and sat and ate and talked for about an hour and a half.
Wow.
About an hour and a half. We just sat at the table, eating pizza, drinking Budweiser, and just talking, hanging out, telling stories.
Talk about memories.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was amazing. It was amazing. Because, I mean, you know, like I said earlier about Zane Dawson, it's an old adage people like to throw out. Michael was cool on the other side of the pillow, too. He just, Michael Hayes, you know, people give Michael Hayes a lot of guff for this or that or the other, but at the end of the day, Michael Hayes is an amazing human being.
Who gave you your first break?
Well, that ties in where I was going with Chris. You know, that was kind of how I got in. I had frequented the store a lot, like I said, and I knew that Chris was working with a local promotion. Most everybody around this area knows it's the AIWF. Chris was working with them. Now this was back in the late '90s. You know, when hardcore wrestling was really, really, really hot. You know, this was right off of the resurgence of, you know, the build up, rather, not the resurgence, but the original build up of ECW, and you know, AIWF was actually doing those kind of matches, those Japanese death match kind of stuff, actually even before ECW was doing it. And Chris was working with those guys. He was a manager slash. They actually just at that time just called him the Bodyguard. That was his name. That was his gimmick. He was coming out with guys like the Ghost Rider, Jackie Anderson, and a couple other guys. And I had went down to the store. Wind's picking up on us. Hope it don't cover too much into that microphone. But I'd been down to the store a lot, and I'd asked Chris, how do I get into this? You know, this is all I've ever wanted to do my whole life. And as it turns out, ironically enough, 2 weekends after the conversation Chris and I had, they were AIWF was doing a show in what has now become HCWA's home, the Wentworth National Guard Armory. And so he's like, come on over to the Armory. I'll introduce you to who you need to meet, and then it'll be on you. You can go from there. And the first man I met was probably my strongest mentor, and somebody that I think about a lot. Sorry. Dangerous Don Carson, the first person I met. He had a huge impact on me, as you can see. We lost Don a few years ago. I was lucky enough to be able to go. AIWF did a fundraiser for Don, and I was lucky enough to be able to go because it wasn't, I think, 2 months, I think it was, after the benefit, he was gone. But he was the first person I met, and he was basically, you know, at the time, you know, not a lot of people. It's kayfabe. Not a lot of people are supposed to know this, but most everybody knows it by now. You know, Rick Diesel was pretty much running things in AIWF. It was his baby. AIWF was. So between Diesel and Don Carson, they decided, after I talked to Don was like, well, you know, I told him I wanted to break in kind of like Diamond Dallas Page did. I wanted to break in as a manager because I knew there were things I needed to learn, but I didn't need to learn as much to be a manager as I needed to learn to be a wrestler. So I wanted to come in kind of like Diamond Dallas Page did and start out as a manager. That way I could be out in front of the crowd. I could kind of get a feel for how to work the crowd, a feel for what I needed to do.
You could work on your character.
I could work on my character.
You could see what worked and what didn't work.
Exactly. Before I actually got in the ring. So
wow.
while I was training in the ring before the shows, and then Dean had a place open in Mount Airy. It was at the old Collins Chevrolet. It was the old car wash building, and he had a deal set up down there. And like I said, you know, Diesel would come down there, Don Carson would come down there, Major Havoc, Jody Rushbrook's a really good friend of mine. A bunch of the guys would come down there, and they would all kind of work with us some. Brian Danzig came down to work with us some. You know, just different guys would come in and you know, show us little things along the way. And ironically enough, things had evolved from the time I started in November of '98. I had my first match in May of '99 in Stewart, Virginia, at Rotary Field at AIWF Extreme Content, and things had evolved for Chris as well, for Slim Jim. He had his own little group of guys that kind of shadowed him and followed him around. It was almost like similar to if you watch AEW, the guys that follow the Dark Order around.
Yeah.
The guys in the masks.
Yes.
Well, see, these guys weren't in masks. They had their own characters, and it was basically like a sideshow. That was basically what Weirdo Inc. was. That's what they were called, was Weirdo Inc. And it was kind of like a sideshow. You know, you had guys dressed in just the most ridiculous outfits you could think of to throw them in. And my first match was a gauntlet match against Weirdo Inc. And I ended up, going through they get in the ring. And these guys, they, you know, in fairness, they weren't wrestlers. You know, Chris had a little bit of training and knew enough knew enough to get through. And you know, at that time, I was pretty much as green as the grass too. But you know, they'd get in the ring, I'd boot him in the gut, give him a stunner, and pin him. Next to get in the ring, as soon as he, you know, trip over the rope, stumble in, I'd kick him in the gut, give him a stunner, and pin him. Till I finally got to Chris, and I ended up pinning Chris and winning the match. And you know, things were just kind of off and running. I managed and teamed with Terminator X for a while. I managed and teamed with the Ghost Riders, Jackie Anderson, and at that time was a guy named Terry Mulligan. And I mean, it was a blast. You know, just traveling town to town. You know, just as they say, and I was honestly doing it. I was living the dream.
That leads into my next question. With all the years you've been in wrestling, who are you looking forward to wrestling still that you have not wrestled yet?
That's a tough one.
All right, Robert, I have a couple more questions here. Who are you looking forward to working with that you have not worked with yet?
Well, to be honest, I've pretty much worked with just about everybody in NHCWA. There's a couple guys, you know, I wouldn't mind dancing with some more. You know, Sweet Daddy's a real good friend of mine. We've always had really good chemistry together. You know, John Evans, Matt Sulphur, those guys are just absolutely incredible. I mean, you know, the future's bright. The future's bright for HCWA, and the guys that we have, the guys that we have that are training right now, some of the newer guys that are coming up through the ranks. We've got a lot of talent comes from a lot of different places. You know, speaking of characters and people that are reinvented themselves, how about Foxy Roxy?
And the Broken Dolls.
And the Broken Dolls.
Phenomenal.
Just, you know, and it's like, you know, like I said, we've got such a good crew in HCWA right now. And, you know, like I said, the guys that are coming up, you know, it's just phenomenal to be working with such a good crew of people. And, you know, so much talent and such a broad base. You know, we've got heavyweights, we've got high flyers, we've got technical guys, we've got hardcore guys. You know, it's just across the board. It's just a, you know, a solid thing for HCWA.
Roster.
Yeah, a solid roster. And, you know, it's one guy I've worked with in the past that I just always enjoy working with is well, actually two of them. Rob McBride and Tank Lawson. I've worked a lot. I've worked a lot with Rob in the past. Not so much with Tank, but you know, those guys are always fun to work with. I'd like to maybe do something with them. Who knows? You may see you may see Christopher and myself push a few buttons with the FTF before it's over with. You know, glad to have Project Annihilation in with HCWA. Those guys, I've worked with both Drake and Cruz in the past, and those guys together are a really formidable team. You know, somebody that, you know, Christopher and I could have some pretty good matches with, I think. You know, it's just the list goes on and on. You know, it's like, you know, I mean, it's obvious I ain't as built and cut and skinny as I used to be. I'm not as, you know, not as dark-headed. You know, the elder of the tribe look has started to set in a little bit with all this gray. So, you know,
thanks to the ESO, your hair ain't as long as it used to be.
No,
unfortunately.
Yeah, well, you know, things happen, but you know, I mean, at the end of the day, the one match we're always going to lose is the match with Father Time. Father Time's always going over in that match.
Truer words have never been spoken, guys.
So you know, the thing of it is not necessarily, you know, who I would like to, you know, who I would like to work with, maybe that I hadn't worked with, because like I said, you know, I mean, I got let's see, today is the 16th. Today's the 16th of November. It's ironic that we're sitting here having this conversation right now, because yesterday was my 21st anniversary.
Wow. Happy anniversary.
My very first show that I worked was November the 15th of 1998. So we're a day past my 21st anniversary in the business. And like I said, you know, I've worked with Jimmy Valiant. I've worked, you know, partnered up with Ricky Morton. You know, Barbarian. I've had deals with the Barbarian. I've had deals with a lot of different guys. You know, if I had a dream, if I had an ultimate dream that I could pull off, it would be to be the Raging Rebel one last time. And it's, of course, they say never in this business, but if I had a mark out moment in my head, it would be coming to the ring with Michael Hayes as my manager. That would be the mark out moment for me.
Oh,
of course,
wow.
You know, of course, something like that could never happen in the position he's in right now. But you know, that if there was like a mark out moment for me or something that I would dream that I could do that I've never done, that would be it. Would be to be involved in some sort of match that you know, Michael was like a corner man or something like that. So as far as actually wrestling against somebody, you know, there's really not that many that I'd really want to work against that I haven't already worked against. Maybe there is one that I have not worked against. I have worked with, and I mentioned him earlier. I would absolutely love the opportunity at some point in time before I hang the boots up to stand across the ring from Zane and Dave Dawson. The Dawsons are amazing. They, I got a feeling, I can't speculate one way or the other because it's not my place to call it, but I see them wearing NWA Tag Team Gold. Wow. Sooner than later.
Wow.
They may actually end up being the guys that beat Rock and Roll for them, I think, because
wow.
Zane and Dave are just, they're, in my opinion, they're one of the top 3 or 4 tag teams on the entire planet right now. So Zane and Dave Dawson would probably be, if it was somebody I haven't already worked with, would probably be them.
All right, one last question.
Okay.
All right, Robert, you said you've been in the business 21 years. I've got one more question. What are you looking for to accomplish in the future in wrestling?
Well, you know, like I was saying, you know, Father Time's a match we're all going to lose. And, you know, I know my days in the ring are winding down. You know, I've had some health issues, some health scares, and, you know, it's just, at this point, you know, my focus is on the creative side of things. My focus is, you know, building a bigger, better, brighter HCWA for the younger guys to have a foundation to build from. You know, it's like guys that have come along that really could, had they pushed a little harder, went a few more places, got their name out a little bit more, really could have been somewhere. You know, the Lamont Steels and Johnny Roxvilles and so many other guys who have come through the door and been a major part of building HCWA. You know, guys, you know, my dreams of me going somewhere, people ask me all the time, it's like, Robbie, why didn't you push to go somewhere? And, you know, a lot of it is because of Jamie, you know, my autistic son. And Jamie's in my heart, you know. Jamie's a lot of the reason I'm still alive today. You know, there have been times I would have, you know, could have been in a really bad position, put myself in a really bad position, and I didn't do it because of him. You know, he's my heart, and I couldn't, you know, if Vince McMahon or Tony Khan called me today and said, hey, Robert, we want you to go here and do this, or we want you to go here and do that, I'd be like, man, you know, I'll do whatever you need me to do as long as I can come home. You know, I can't do, you know, it's like, you know, everybody in the indies, the 99% of them, the only ones that don't are the ones that are either A, so driven, or A, so oblivious to what reality is that they think they're going to make a living on the independent circuit. You know, there are some guys who can actually do that, but the majority of the guys have to have what we call a shoot job. You know, I can't even go like over the road truck driver because I can't leave Jamie like that. You know, so you know, that's just as much as I love wrestling, my main focus is to be a good father, right. And then everything else comes secondary. And You know, it's like, you know, my biggest thing is I have to be here for him too, and as well as my other kids. You know, between myself and Monica, we have 6 kids, 6 grandkids. So, you know, my family takes up a lot of my time, and it's not something that I could just walk away from to say, yeah, I'm going to wrestle for WWE, or I'm going to write and book for WWE. You know, it's got to be. It would have to be something to where I could be here. You know, I can't just do that. You know, so on the flip side of things, what I can do is I can lay a good foundation for the guys who do have a future to go there, who do have a possible WWE future, who do have a possible AEW future, or Ring of Honor, or TNA, New Japan, wherever. You know, one of the guys, you know, that would be a good follow-up for a lot of these guys to look at is Hangman Adam Page. You know, his first match ever in front of a crowd was refereeing for us, and it was at the John Chilton Memorial Show in February of 2008. It's the first time he ever did anything in front of a crowd, in front of a live crowd. His first actual match, if I recall, was for Jimmy Love and Pure Pro, but his first actual match working in front of the crowd was refereeing that night up there. And then, you know, he came on board when me and another guy rebirthed my former promotion, and he was there with us for a while through that. Had that amazing cage match with Christopher Daniels when he was the champion of that promotion, that pretty much got him on the map and you know, set wheels in motion for him. And, you know, he deserves all the credit in the world. That kid has worked his tail off to get where he's at, and I'm so proud to see what he's made of himself. You know, all we were initially, you know, not only through the referee spot, but then the matches he had, and putting him in the cage with Daniels, and the match he had there, and you know, giving him that little bit of a rub. You know, it allowed him an opportunity with his hard work behind it to springboard it and make something out of himself, and to be where he's at today. And I'm so happy for him, because if anybody deserves it, he does, because that kid put the work in and he made it happen for himself, and I am beyond happy for him. And you know, to see that, it gives these other guys an inspiration to know that, hey, you know, if I bust my ass and I do things the right way, the way he did it, maybe there's a shot for me to go somewhere.
A new hope, if you will.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, that's a good analogy. And, you know, to put that together, like I said earlier, you know, with, you know, that's my passion now. You know, for years, you know, 21 years doing this, you know, like I said, I'm having some health issues, body's pretty beat up. You know, I'm trying to get in better shape. You know, I joined the PF down here. We've actually got a good gym around here now to work out at. So I'm hoping to turn this into a different shape besides round. You know, I got my goal there to work for my health, for my kids, for my grandkids, but also to be able to be here to try to keep putting together ideas for these guys to put to fruition in front of a crowd, that's going to help them become stars, that's going to help them to live their dreams, it's going to help them to get bookings in different places that maybe are a little bit higher up the food chain, so to speak, than HCWA is at this point. You know, I'd love to build HCWA into something similar to like a training ground, possibly, for one of these other promotions, kind of like what kind of like Ohio Valley, yeah, or you know what NXT originally was in its foundation days, when it was still Florida Championship Wrestling. You know, kind of like a proving ground to try to help guys to get to where they need to be. That would be my ultimate goal for HCWA in itself. My ultimate goal for myself, though, as far as that's concerned, and my future in the business, is just to keep doing what I'm doing. You know, as long as the good Lord God in heaven above will let me continue to do what I can do inside the ring for as long as I can do it, that's great. That's wonderful. But my focus now is starting to shift. Paradigm shift, if you will. It's starting to shift more and focus more on what I'm doing backstage to try to help these guys to further themselves, to get to where they want to be. You know what I mean? It's kind of, you know, that's my gratification there, from that vantage point. You know, I mean, like I said, my own self gratification is listening to the crowd and the work that the guys are putting in the ring to make them happy, to make them mad, to evoke that emotional reaction from them, because that's the biggest lost art. You know, call me old school, okay? You know something? I love that term because I'm old school. You know, the stuff that the guys are doing nowadays is a lot more dangerous. It's a lot more to it. It's a lot more. Sometimes it's almost a shortcut to thinking. It's like, you know, I can get just as big of a pop out of an arm drag as this guy's getting from a twisting corkscrew plancha to the floor, where if the guy don't catch him and he hits the concrete floor, he's got broken bones, concussions, or worse.
And a shortened career.
And a very, very much shortened career. You know, it's like if these guys would study more of the old school way and realize that, you know, their work rate doesn't have to be so much gymnastics. Doesn't have to be. Now, don't get me wrong. I credit these guys all the credit in the world. There ain't no way in the world my fat ass can do that stuff. I'm not even trying it, you know. And I applaud them for what they can do. But I think that in the end, basically what they're seeing, what the fans are getting to see, it isn't as much of a wrestling event as much as it is just a gymnastics and athletic competition. You know, now granted, wrestling is athletic, wrestling is sport. Granted. But, like I said, if you watch the crowds today, and you go back and you watch the crowds from yesteryear, and look at the differences of what got that crowd behind it, because those guys knew how to, as the old school guys say, work. Those guys knew how to draw that emotion out of the crowd, that they didn't have to get in here and cut 450s and shooting star presses and corkscrew tope suicidas to the floor and all this stuff.
They knew how to sell too.
They knew how to sell. Selling is the lost art in professional wrestling. Period. End of story. Selling is the lost art.
If we don't sell it, they can't buy it.
I'm telling you. I've watched matches on NXT. I've watched matches on Raw. I've watched matches on AEW. And that's my biggest pet peeve. You got a guy coming at you who is bigger than you, who's going to kick you upside the head, and you spin around and no-sell it and knee him upside the head. Try pulling that crap in 1976 against Harley Race and see what happens to you.
Right.
Yeah. When they look up the dictionary, when somebody looks in the dictionary for the definition of a rubber band, it's going to be what's left of your body, because Harley's going to stretch the hell out of you if you no-sell him like that. And it's like I can't get on board with that. I can actually see and understand what these guys are doing with all the flips and all this other stuff. You know, it's quote unquote the evolution of the business. Okay, it happens. Everything evolves. Everything moves forward. I get that. But this no-selling stuff, no, there's no room at all in our business for that. That cheapens the product overall, and it just makes it makes the guys involved look like shit. Just quite frankly, it's like, you know, okay, no, they're adding realism to it. No, they're not adding realism to it. They just killed the whole rest of the story. Why is somebody gonna kick me in the head, and then I'm gonna turn around and give them a knee to the head by the time they've hit the mat and started to sell back up from kicking me? Now I'm kneeing them in the head. But 30 seconds earlier, the guy punched me and I fell down like he knocked my teeth out.
Right, true.
Really? Explain to me how that makes sense.
It does not.
At all. So it's like, you know, I see stuff like that. Those are my biggest pet peeves right now with the business, is when guys no-sell stuff like that and then pop right back up and do something else. Yeah, the crowd goes ooh and ah. The crowd goes ooh and ah when they do all the flippy stuff. They do all the ooh and ahs too. But if you go back, like I said, you know, Ricky Morton's getting his tail kicked and hits an arm drag out of nowhere, and there's not a single solitary person sitting down.
Right.
off of arm drag, off of a quick comeback, arm drag, drop kick. Even if the heel cut him right back off, there's that reaction. There's that emotional reaction, and he didn't have to try to kill himself to do it.
And they're just waiting for Ricky to get that hot tag to Robert to come in there, work over the guy, and then finish with that beautiful double drop kick.
Yep.
Get the 1, 2, 3.
Yep. And it's like that's lost. And the reason that's lost is because the guys aren't selling anymore like they should. The guys aren't selling the stuff the way they needed to sell it. And it's like a lot of that, honestly, is ego driven, I think. I really believe a lot of that's ego driven, because it's like, oh, I can't sell that because that'll make me look weak. I can't sell that because that'll make my character look weak. Well, I hate to tell you, but if you think that selling something for somebody else makes your character look weak, then chances are that's probably why you haven't made it very far in the business. And it's probably why you're not going to make it very far in the business, because you have to learn how to sell. You know, I'll close with this one thing, and I have to get this off of my chest because it drives me nuts. You know, again, you know, a lot of people out here that see this are going to be like, well, I don't even watch the product. I don't even know this. I don't even know that. You know, I quit watching because it ain't like it was back then. I agree with you, Robert. You know, yeah. You know, it ain't like it was back then. I can't stand the new crap. I don't watch it. A lot of people are going to say that. I watch it every time it's on TV. And, you know, it's because I like to follow and keep up with the business. I like to know what's going on, because as a booker, I have to try to keep up, and to a degree, I have to mix enough of that newer stuff in to keep the younger crowd involved. Because if I go out and I book a straight 1986, 1987 show, which I would love to do and would be my preference, if I went out and I booked it exactly like that, the younger kids ain't gonna have a clue what's going on, ain't gonna know nothing, and it's just gonna be like, So you have to mix a little bit of that in as the booker. So in doing that, I like to try to keep up with what's going on and everything else. And I catch a lot of heat for this, but I'm very vocal about it. I'm a huge Brock Lesnar fan. I'm a huge Brock Lesnar mark. And the reason being is because if you look at the guy, you look through anybody else in that entire locker room, Brock's the most legit guy there. That's the reason Taker agreed to lose his streak to him. Brock's the most legit guy there. Period. Take one look at him. Take one look at what he's done.
Right.
The guy lost what? 2 UFC fights? Everything else, he just walked right through. He destroyed Randy Couture. And it's like, you know, this is the most believable guy you've got. And then you get the riffraff from everybody. Oh, he's a part-timer. He's a part-timer. Guess what, guys? Vince pays him to be a part-timer. It's not that Brock doesn't just show up. It's because he's not written in to show up. Why? Because he's a draw. You want to save that draw. You want to pad that draw when it's going to mean something. You want to say, hey, Brock Lesnar's coming. And for all the people that hate Lesnar, all the people that trash Lesnar and everything else, I can guarantee 97% or better of those people are watching every time Brock shows up on TV.
And you want to make every time he does show up be special.
Exactly. And see, I liken it to the territory days. You know, Flair was coming in and he was going to wrestle Tommy Rich in Georgia for the title. He was going to wrestle Eddie Graham in Florida for the title. He was going to wrestle Jerry Lawler in Tennessee for the title. He'd come in and everybody was there. Oh, the champ's here, the title's on the line. This is going to be the night he's going to lose it, and I'm going to be there to see it. And Lawler would come that close. That close. Tommy Rich would come that close. Eddie Graham would come that close. Flair would sneak out the back door of the title. The next time he came to town, he wrestled the same guy, and you couldn't stir the place with a stick. Because everybody was there, because they knew Lawler was that close.
Yeah.
Lawler was that close. He's going to get him this time. He's going to get him.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with Lesnar. When Lesnar's got the title, it's not necessarily that he came in and did the honors that first match. It's not necessarily that he came in and put the guy over that first match. He didn't have to. All he's got to do is not show up. And then when he shows up, everybody's like, okay, it's time. He's going to lose it now. Seth's going to beat him. Roman's going to beat him. coming up in Survivor Series. Rey Mysterio's going to beat him. I mean, come on, guys. Brock Lesnar. Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio is a legend. Rey Mysterio is an icon, and Rey Mysterio deserves every bit of accolade he's ever gotten. But if you do a tale of the tape, it's just like when Rey beat Big Show, when Rey beat Nash. It was a tale of the tape.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, you know, everybody seems to forget. Brock did the honors for Eddie, God rest his soul, at No Way Out 2004, when Eddie beat him for the title. Brock did the honors for he made Goldberg look like it was 98 all over again the first time they met. Mm-hmm. Well, not the first time, but, you know, when Goldberg came back.
Yeah.
2 spears and a jackhammer and it's over. It's a wrap.
Right. Yeah.
Goldberg's out with the title. Brock does business. And people overlook that fact because he's not there every show. Because he's not defending the title every show. Nobody does business any better than Brock Lesnar does. And it's the proof's in the pudding. Like I said, what he did with Rey, I mean not Rey, but Eddie, excuse me. And even what he did with Rey. Rey beating the crap out of him with the chair in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Brock doing business.
He sold it.
He sold the crap out of it. He got out of the ring. He scooted. He hightailed it. What a heel's supposed to do. What a heel is supposed to do. He scooted. He hightailed. He was gone. And guess what he did by doing that? He popped Rey up. Everybody's like, oh, wait a minute. Rey took that chair and wore his big ass out.
Right.
Rey might actually have a shot at this. Rey might actually be able to do something with that big dude.
He just might.
You know what I mean? But it's because Brock did business. And that's why I'm a fan of Brock Lesnar. Is because, realistically, he doesn't have to. Realistically, in the position he's in, he could just be a total prick and say, you know something? No, Seth Rollins has not beaten me twice this year. Here's the title. I'll stay home. I'll breach my contract. I don't care. You done paid me millions of dollars. What are you really going to do to me? I'd call Dana White and I'd go back to work next week. What are you really going to do? Brock's literally in that position and can do that. And he doesn't.
Yeah.
He came right back home to WWE. Like I said, he's lost to Seth Rollins twice this year. How many other people can say they beat Brock Lesnar twice in 1 year?
The short list is a very, very short list.
But it happened because the old terminology,
Undertaker
best
can't
for
even say
business.
that. Undertaker cannot even say that.
Yeah. It's the old terminology is best for business. People don't realize Brock was built in the middle 2000s. People forget. People totally forget. Brock annihilated Hulk Hogan. Was like pulling a Bubba Ray Dudley and like wiping Hogan's blood all over himself. You know, people forget he beat The Rock at SummerSlam 2003 and won the Undisputed title. Made pretty much short order of Rock. It wasn't a very, very long match. You know, people forget those guys gave Brock the rub back then, and Brock's paying it forward now to guys like Seth, to guys like Eddie when he dropped the belt to him. You know, and I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent again, but I had to get that off my chest because it just drives me nuts when I sit here and I listen to people talk about that, and it's like, to me, in my opinion, the way that I look at it, Brock gets it better than just about anybody else that's on the current product, that's on the current roster.
True.
Because he shows up, when he's paid to show up, he shows up when management tells him to show up, and he does business. I mean, like I said, that thing with Goldberg blew my mind. You would have never in a million years made me believe that match would have been over in, what was it, 23 seconds or something like that?
Something like that.
Like,
very quick.
Yeah.
Quicker than a hiccup.
Yeah, it was like they lock up, they're in the corner, Goldberg shoves Brock off. Brock like stuns, sells him, feeds around to stand up, boom, there's spear number 1. Boom, there's spear number 2. Jackhammer, bam, 1, 2, 3. That's doing business. That's making your opponent look like $1 million. Guess what you just did? You made your opponent look like $1 million, and also you just sold out the rematch.
Right.
Because now everybody wants to see if Goldberg can do it twice.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Now you just sold tickets.
You put asses
You put
in
your
seats.
opponent. You put your opponent over, and you sold tickets. What more business can you do?
That's it. That's
What
it.
more business can you do? And that's why I'm a Brock Lesnar fan. But that be that as it may, like I said, I had to throw that in there. But like I said, you know, I appreciate your time. I appreciate Devin coming out here and, you know, fighting the cold to do this interview. I really appreciate you guys coming out and doing this. Like I said, you know, just folks, keep your eyes out on NHCWA. We'll be back and rolling January the 11th, Roxborough, January the 18th in Wentworth, February 1st in Roxborough, February 15th in Wentworth for the John Chilton Memorial Show, March 14th in Roxborough, and March 21st in Wentworth. Those are the next 6 dates. You know, we've had some issues that was beyond our control that we've had to pull our 4 shows for this year. I know upcoming next week is something, and I'm going to touch on this really quick. I know, you know, this interview is going a lot longer than we'd all planned for it to. Sorry, guys. Typical Robbie. But these guys are doing a Robert Stanley Appreciation Night. This coming up Saturday night in Wentworth. Like I posted on Facebook, I'm not real sure how I feel about that. I'm appreciative, and I love the boys for doing it. I don't know that I actually deserve it. A lot of people are saying I do. That's not for me to speculate. I don't know. I don't know what I've done that any other promoter shouldn't want to do, any other booker shouldn't want to do for their talent. I don't know that I've done anything really above and beyond that myself. But you know, the boys feel like I deserve it, and they want to do it for me. So you know, I love them. I appreciate them. You know, all you guys. You know, I know you two are going to be there and be a part of it. You know, it means the world to me that, you know, the guys think enough of me that they would want to do something like that. You know, like I said, I mean, it's been 21 years wide open, and pray to God that I'm still running shows and still here and still promoting and still booking 21 years from now. You know, it's in my blood. It's all I've ever wanted to do is be a part of this business. And you know, like I said, with, you know, given what I was given, and having Jamie and not being able to chase these dreams myself, it's been a blessing for me to work and be able to give the foundation to these guys for them to try to chase theirs. You know, and I appreciate the position God's put me in to be able to do that, to be able to be here for these guys and to help them along the way. And you know, I couldn't, like I said, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I couldn't ask, beg, or anything else for a better crew of guys than what HCWA has right now.
It's a family.
It really is. And you know, just like any other family, there's been some trials and tribulations. There's been a few tests thrown in front of us, but you know, we've made it. We've weathered the storm, so to speak, and we'll continue to weather the storm. But you know, because I mean, at the end of the day, I truly believe in my heart. I truly believe in everybody that's part of HCWA, and you know, with them doing this for me this coming up weekend, it shows me that they still believe in me too. And you know, that having that kind of respect, having that kind of mutual respect, and you know, you
can't buy it.
No, you can't.
You can't buy it.
No, you can't. And you know, I tell people all the time, you know, I tell people all the time how blessed I am, and I really am. I'm a really lucky man to be in the position that I'm in, to have the people around me that I have around me, including you guys, everybody, you know, from you guys to the referees to security to all the boys in the back, and you know, Monica. You know, Monica's my rock. Monica's my foundation. She's stood by my side through it all. You know, we've been together. Like I said, I've been wrestling 21 years. as of yesterday was my anniversary, and in April she and I will have been together 20 of it.
Happy anniversary.
So yeah,
Get that in there.
We got a few more months for that, but yeah, WrestleMania Sunday is our 20-year anniversary. So,
wow, that's awesome.
You know, we got big plans. We got things that we're wanting to do here. You know, we got this ring now that we can be doing training and stuff in, working with these kids, trying to bring them along. And like I said, we got the upcoming show, which I know is going to be an emotional roller coaster for me. I'm sure, because I like to play the big badass on TV, but like most of you guys know, I'm just an old softy at heart.
You deserve it. You
I don't know about all that, but I don't know about all that, but like I said, I appreciate the sentiment. I really do. And like I said, it's just we got that coming up, and then the Christmas break, to let everybody kind of, what I mean, just kind of take a rest, enjoy your families, be with your families for the holidays.
Nurse injuries, if you will.
Nurse injuries, whatever the case may be, and then we start back up in January. We're refreshed, we're ready to rock and roll. Let's go out there and kill it, and that's what we're going to do. That's exactly what we're going to do. So, like I said, I want to thank you again. I appreciate you doing this.
Thank you, Robert.
Gothic superstar Devin Graves on the camera. I appreciate you doing this. Like I said, it's been my pleasure to be here for the interview. Looking forward to seeing some of the interviews with some of the other guys coming up. I know you guys already shot one with J.W. Dalton. I'm looking forward to seeing that one. Seeing where we go forward with this, giving the fans a little bit of an opportunity to get a little bit more on the inside, get to know us a little bit better, the real us,
right.
And not just what they see portrayed in front of them at an NHCWA event. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how all this turns out, how everything goes. Thank you again for everything you do, for all the hard work you do, and all the hard work that you do, Devin, to make us look good on film. To emphasize what we're doing, and the jobs that you two guys are doing is just absolutely phenomenal, and it's really appreciated by all of us, not just me, but I know I speak for the entire locker room. The job that you guys are doing, and we really appreciate you for doing it. Like I said, we've got a crew, we've got a family, and like I said, next year is going to be a lot of fun, and hopefully next year is going to be some really, really big steps for HCWA to keep growing, to keep expanding. May even start looking for some more venues to run. To, who knows, maybe we pop to 3 weekends a month, maybe we pop to 4 weekends a month, maybe you never know what's going to happen next year. So just strap on your boots, hold on for the ride, because it's gonna be a fun one. I'm looking forward to 2020. I'm looking forward to the challenges it brings, and I'm looking forward to fighting those battles with all you guys by my side, because it's gonna be rock and roll. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you again, my friend. I appreciate it. Thank you, and we'll see you guys next Saturday in Wentworth, and then January 11th, Roxborough, HCWA New Year's Revenge.
All right, for HCWA Wrestling and for Shootin with the Lawdog, I'm the Lawdog Brent Lawson with Robert Stanley, and behind the camera is the Gothic superstar Devin Graves. We'll see you at an upcoming event. We're out.